"Mom, I gave your house to my in-laws. I thought you were going to die." Those words left my son's mouth as if they were simple, like someone commenting on the weather or asking for a glass of water. But for me, still lying in that hospital bed, my body weak and my mind trying to understand where I was, those words were a punch to the gut. I had just woken up from a coma that lasted 6 months. 6 months where my body rested. But my soul, I don't know where my soul was. And the first thing my only son said to me wasn't, "Thank God you're alive." It wasn't, "Mom, I was so scared of losing you." It was that he had given away my house, the house I built with my own 2 hands, with my sweat, with my years of work, to his in-laws, because he thought I was going to die. My name is Margaret Turner. I'm 60 years old, and this is my story. I was born in a small town south of Atlanta, Georgia. My mother sewed dresses for the ladies at church, and my father worked in construction. We didn't have much, but we had dignity. My mother always used to say, "Margaret, never ask for anything you can't earn with your own 2 hands." I carried that lesson with me my whole life. At 22, I married Robert. He was a construction worker, honest, hardworking. We had Matthew 2 years later. I remember the day he was born as if it were yesterday. It was a cold January morning, with fog blanketing the streets. I held that baby in my arms and thought, "I'm going to give you everything I never had." And I did. Robert died when Matthew was just 8 years old. An accident at work, a beam that fell. He didn't stand a chance. I was left a widow, alone, with a small child and not a penny saved. But I didn't give up. I started working cleaning houses. Then I learned to cook classic Southern dishes and began selling casseroles and pulled pork at neighborhood gatherings. Little by little, I saved money, pinching every dollar, never buying anything for myself that wasn't essential. My clothes were the same for years. My shoes were mended. Everything was for Matthew. I paid for his school, paid for his uniforms, his books, his field trips. When he wanted to study business administration at the university, I said yes, even knowing it meant working even harder. I cleaned houses in the morning, sold food in the afternoon, and ironed other people's clothes at night. Matthew was everything to me. He was smart, polite. The people in our neighborhood always commented, "You're so lucky, Margaret. Your son is such a fine young man." And I believed it. At 32, Matthew graduated. He got a good job at an accounting firm. I remember when he came home with the news. He hugged me tight and said, "Mom, now it's my turn to take care of you." I cried that day. I cried with relief, with joy, with accumulated exhaustion. But I also cried because deep down, a part of me knew that I had already given everything I had, and that now I could finally rest. It was around that time that I bought my house. It wasn't big, it wasn't luxurious, but it was mine. It was on a quiet street in Oak Haven, near where I grew up. It had 2 bedrooms, a small living room, a kitchen where a wooden table I painted myself could fit, and in the back, a yard with a lemon tree that bore fruit every year. I adored that lemon tree. Every morning, I would drink my coffee sitting in the yard, looking at that tree. The scent of lemons mixed with the fresh morning air made me feel that it had all been worth it. Matthew liked the house too. He would come to visit me every weekend. He'd bring sweet rolls, and we'd sit in the kitchen and talk. He would tell me about work, about his colleagues, about life. It was simple. It was good. I thought that this was what I had earned. Peace, a home, the company of my son. At 35, Matthew met Patricia. He introduced her to me one Sunday after church. Patricia was pretty, well-dressed, with painted nails and her hair always perfectly styled. She smiled a lot, but her smile never reached her eyes. I noticed it from the first day, but I didn't say anything because Matthew was in love, and as a mother, I wanted him to be happy. Patricia came from a middle-class family. Her father owned a hardware store, and her mother was a retired teacher. They lived in a bigger house than mine, in a better neighborhood. And Patricia never let me forget it. When she came to visit, she would look around as if she were evaluating everything. She would touch the furniture with her fingertips, as if she were afraid of getting her hands dirty. Once, while I was serving coffee, she commented, "Margaret, don't you think this house is a bit dated? Matthew deserves to live in a better place, don't you think?" I smiled, but inside, something hurt. Matthew married Patricia 6 months later. The party was at her parents' house. I helped pay for a part of it, even though I couldn't afford it, because he was my son, and I always did everything for my son. After the wedding, they rented a small apartment. Patricia complained all the time. She said the place was cramped, that the neighborhood was noisy, that she deserved more. Matthew started working longer hours. He would come home tired, stressed, but every time I asked him if everything was okay, he'd say yes. "I'm just building our future, Mom." The years went by. Patricia never got pregnant. We never talked about it. But I saw in her eyes a bitterness that grew. She started visiting me less, and when she did come, she always had a sharp comment. "Margaret, don't you ever get tired of cooking the same thing? This tablecloth is the same one from 5 years ago. Matthew says you don't want to change this old furniture. Why are you so attached to the past?" I never answered. I just smiled, because I had learned over a lifetime that some battles aren't worth fighting. Matthew started coming less too, always with excuses, too much work, commitments, fatigue. But I understood, or at least I tried to. I remember one September afternoon, about a year and a half ago. Matthew came to visit me alone. He sat with me in the yard looking at the lemon tree. He seemed distant. "Mom," he said, "have you ever thought about selling this house?" I froze. "Sell? Why?" He shrugged. "I don't know. It's a big house for you alone, and the money could help you. I don't know. Live better." I looked at him, trying to understand. "Matthew, this house is all I have. My memories are here, my years of work. I don't need anything else." He was silent for a moment, then nodded. But he didn't seem convinced. Now, as I lie here in this hospital bed remembering that day, I understand. He was already planning. And I, naive, thought it was just a conversation. It was 7 months ago when everything changed. I was at home, preparing lunch. I felt a dizzy spell. I thought it was just fatigue, so I sat down for a moment. But the dizziness got worse. The living room started to spin. My vision blurred. I tried to stand up, but my legs wouldn't obey. I fell. The last thing I remember is the cold floor against my face and the scent of lemon coming from the yard. Then everything went black. When I woke up, I was in a white room, bright lights, the smell of disinfectant, machines beeping around me. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know how much time had passed. A nurse came in, and seeing me awake, she smiled with relief. "Mrs. Turner, thank God. I'm going to call the doctor." My throat was dry. I tried to speak, but only a hoarse whisper came out. Where am I?" "In the hospital, ma'am. You had a stroke. You were in a coma for 6 months." 6 months, half a year of my life, gone. A few minutes later, the doctor came in, checked my signs, asked questions. I answered what I could, but my head was still confused. "I'm going to notify your son," the nurse said. "Matthew." My heart filled with hope. He must have been desperate, worried. He must have been suffering for me. He arrived 2 hours later, entering the room with Patricia by his side. She was impeccable as always. Matthew looked tired, but he didn't seem relieved. He seemed annoyed. I smiled, though weakly, though with pain. "Matthew, my son." He approached, but he didn't hug me. He stood there, arms crossed. "Mom, it's good you woke up." His voice was cold, formal. Patricia stayed near the door, checking her phone. I tried to extend my hand to him, but Matthew took a step back, and then he said it. "Mom, I gave your house to my in-laws. I thought you were going to die." The silence that followed was deafening. I looked at him, hoping it was a bad joke, but his face was serious. Patricia looked up from her phone and added in a calm voice, "Find somewhere else to live." Something inside me broke in that moment. It wasn't rage, it wasn't desperation, it was clarity. I looked at my son, the child I held in my arms, whom I fed, clothed, educated, and I saw a stranger. I said nothing, just closed my eyes and took a deep breath. And in that silence, I made the most important decision of my life. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to lower myself. I was going to do what I always did, solve everything with my own two hands. And they still didn't know what was coming. I spent 3 more days in the hospital. 3 days where nurses came and went, where doctors checked my vital signs, where bland food arrived on plastic trays, but none of that mattered. My mind was somewhere else. It was in my house, in my yard, under the shade of my lemon tree. I thought about how things were before Patricia, before my son became someone I no longer recognized. And as I stared at the white ceiling of that hospital room, I allowed myself to remember when everything was different. Matthew was a sweet child. I don't just say that because he was my son, I say it because it was true. When he was 5, he used to wake up early and come to the kitchen while I was making breakfast. He would sit on a wooden chair with his legs dangling because they didn't reach the floor yet, and he'd watch me with those big, dark eyes. "Mom, can I help?" I'd give him a wooden spoon, and he would stir whatever I was cooking. Grits, oatmeal, whatever it was. It didn't matter. What mattered was being together. I remember one April morning when he was 6. He brought me a flower he had picked from the neighbor's garden. It was a purple hydrangea, all crumpled because he had squeezed it too tightly in his little hand. "It's for you, Mom, because you're the prettiest." I kept that flower between the pages of my Bible. I still have it, dry, fragile, but still there. That was the Matthew I knew. The boy who cried when he saw a stray dog because he wanted to take it home. The boy who would hug me before bed and say, "Mom, when I grow up, I'm going to buy you a huge house." I would stroke his hair and say, "I don't need a huge house, my love. I just need you to be happy." And I meant it. Robert had died in August. August is a cruel month. It's hot, the air is heavy, and that year it was worse because my world fell apart. I remember the day they came to knock on the door. 2 men from the construction company where Robert worked, holding their hats in their hands, their eyes cast down. "Ma'am, there's been an accident." I don't remember much of what they said after that. Something about a beam, about negligence, about it being instantaneous. But none of that mattered. Robert was dead, and I was alone with an 8-year-old boy. The funeral was simple. We didn't have money for anything big. A few flowers, a modest casket. The church pastor saying words that were lost in the wind. Matthew was quiet the whole time. He didn't cry, just held onto my hand tightly, as if he were afraid I would disappear too. That night, when I put him to bed, he finally spoke. "Mom, is Dad coming back?" I broke down. I lay down beside him, held him tight, and cried. I cried for everything I hadn't been able to cry during the day, and he hugged me back with his thin little arms and said, "Don't cry, Mom. I'll take care of you." He was 8 years old, 8, and he already wanted to take care of me. And I swore in that moment that I would do everything I could so he could have a better life than mine. The first few years were the hardest. I worked from 6 in the morning until 10 at night. I cleaned houses in neighborhoods where the ladies looked at me with pity. "Poor thing," they'd say, "so young and already a widow." I didn't care about the pity, I cared about the money. Every dollar I earned, I saved in a cookie tin hidden under my bed. That tin was my future. It was Matthew's education. It was our food. It was everything. Matthew went to school in the mornings, and in the afternoons, he stayed with our neighbor, Mrs. Gable. She was a kind, elderly woman who didn't charge me much to look after him. Sometimes, when I'd come to pick him up, Matthew would be doing his homework at Mrs. Gable's kitchen table, surrounded by pots and the smell of chicken soup. "He's a very polite boy, Margaret," Mrs. Gable would tell me. "Never causes any trouble." And it was true. Matthew never caused trouble. He never asked for expensive toys, never complained that we couldn't go on school field trips, never held anything against me. When he turned 10, I gave him a used soccer ball I bought at a flea market. It was a little deflated, with dirt stains, but he hugged it as if it were the best gift in the world. "Thanks, Mom. It's perfect." That night, as I watched him play in the street with the other neighborhood kids, I felt that everything was going to be okay, that as long as he was happy, I could endure anything. When Matthew was 12, he started helping me. I didn't ask him to. He just did it. One Saturday morning, while I was getting ready to go sell casseroles in the town square, he appeared in the kitchen with a cardboard box. "I'll help you carry it, Mom." "No, honey, you rest. It's your day off." "I want to help." And so he did. He carried that heavy box for 4 blocks to the square. He stayed with me all morning, helping me serve, take money, pack the food. People smiled when they saw him. "What a hard-working son you have, Margaret." And I would nod, full of pride. That afternoon, when we got home, I gave him half of the day's earnings. "Here, this is for you. You earned it." He shook his head. "No, Mom, save it. It's for the house." I insisted, but he wouldn't take it. "Someday I'm going to make a lot of money," he said, with that childish seriousness that still breaks my heart to remember. "And I'm going to buy you everything you need. You won't have to work so hard." I hugged him tight, so tight I probably hurt him a little, but I didn't care, because in that moment I felt that everything was going to be worth it. Matthew was always smart. In middle school, he got the best grades in his class. The teachers would call me to congratulate me. "Your son has a future, Mrs. Turner. He should continue his studies." And I had already decided. It didn't matter how much I had to work. Matthew was going to study. When it was time to enroll him in high school, I sold my only piece of jewelry, a silver ring Robert had given me when we got married. It wasn't worth much, but it was enough to pay for the enrollment and the books. Matthew cried when he found out. "Mom, you shouldn't have sold that. It was just a ring, honey. You're more important." He fell silent, but I saw something in his eyes, something like guilt, as if he felt he was a burden. I took his face in my hands and made him look at me. "Listen to me very carefully, Matthew. You will never be a burden to me. You are the best thing that has ever happened to me, you understand?" He nodded, but the tears kept streaming down his cheeks. I hugged him, and in that embrace, I made another silent promise, that he would never have to worry about anything, that I would take care of everything. And so it was. During his 3 years of high school, I worked double. I cleaned houses, sold food, ironed clothes. My hands filled with calluses. My back started to ache, but it didn't matter, because Matthew was studying. And when he graduated with honors, when he walked onto the stage to receive his diploma and looked for me in the crowd to smile, I knew I had done the right thing. It was during those years that I bought the house. I had saved for 15 years, dollar by dollar, coin by coin. The cookie tin under my bed had been filled, emptied, and refilled so many times I lost count. But I finally had enough for a down payment on a small house. I saw it one Sunday after church. It was for sale, with a half-fallen sign on the door. It was modest, with unpainted brick walls, old windows, a neglected yard, but it had potential. I spoke to the owner, an elderly man who was moving to another city with his daughter. I offered him everything I had. It wasn't much, but he accepted. "It's yours, ma'am. Take good care of it." And I did. I spent months fixing it up. I painted the walls myself. I repaired the windows with help from a neighbor. I cleaned up the yard. I pulled the weeds. I planted the lemon tree. Matthew was 17 then. He helped me every weekend. He carried buckets of paint, moved furniture, swept. "It's going to be beautiful, Mom," he'd say, wiping the sweat from his forehead. And he was right. When we were finally done, when I sat in the yard for the first time with a cup of coffee and looked around, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. This was my house. Our home. The place where Matthew and I could finally rest after so many years of struggle. But good things never last forever. Matthew started university at 19, studying business administration. It was hard to pay for, but I was used to hard. During those 4 years, I saw him change. Not all at once, it was gradual. He started to dress differently, leaving behind the simple t-shirts for collared shirts. He styled his hair with gel. He bought shoes that I knew cost more than he said. "A friend gave them to me, Mom. He wasn't using them anymore." I didn't believe him, but I didn't say anything. He also started coming home late. He'd say he had to study at the library, that he had group projects, but sometimes he'd come home smelling of beer. "Are you okay, honey?" "Yeah, Mom, just tired." And I'd let him go to his room without any more questions because I trusted him, because he was my son, and because I never thought he could become someone I wouldn't recognize. He graduated at 23, quickly got a job at an accounting firm downtown. The salary was good, better than what I had earned in my entire life. "Now it's my turn to take care of you, Mom," he told me the day he got his first paycheck. He gave me $100. $100. I cried. I tried to refuse it, but he insisted. "Please, Mom, let me do this." And I accepted. For the next few years, Matthew helped me financially. Not much, but enough so I could work less, so my hands could rest a bit, so my back wouldn't ache so much. He would come to visit me every weekend. He'd bring donuts, sometimes flowers. We'd sit in the yard under the lemon tree and talk. He'd tell me about work, his bosses, his colleagues. I'd cook his favorite meal, meatloaf with mashed potatoes. "Nobody cooks like you, Mom." And I'd smile, because those moments were everything to me. Those simple, uncomplicated moments, where it was just him and me, mother and son as it should have always been. But then he met Patricia, and everything changed. At first, it was subtle. Matthew started coming less on weekends. "I have dinner with some friends, Mom. I'm going out with someone from work. I'll be late. Don't wait up." And I understood. He was young. He needed his own life. But when he finally introduced her to me, I knew something was wrong. It wasn't how she looked. Patricia was pretty, well-dressed, polite. It was how she looked at me, as if I were less, as if my house were less, as if everything I had built was worth nothing. I remember that first Sunday. They arrived after church. Matthew had a big smile. "Mom, this is Patricia, my girlfriend." Patricia extended her hand, but she didn't smile with her eyes. "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Turner." "You too, dear. Come in. Come in." I made coffee. I brought out the sweet rolls I had bought that morning. The cups were old, but they were clean. The table was wooden, worn, but sturdy. Patricia sat down carefully, as if she were afraid of getting dirty. While I served the coffee, I saw her looking around. Her gaze lingered on the faded curtains, on the walls with old paint, on the calendar hanging on the wall. And I saw something in her expression. Disdain. Matthew didn't notice. He was too busy looking at her with those eyes full of adoration. "Mom makes the best coffee," he said. Patricia took a sip and smiled, but the smile wasn't sincere. "It's good." We spent an hour talking, or rather, I asked questions, and Patricia answered with short, polite, empty replies. When they left, Matthew hugged me. "Thanks, Mom. Patricia was a little nervous, but she liked you." I smiled and nodded, but in my heart, I knew the truth. Patricia wasn't nervous. Patricia was sizing me up, and I had failed the test. Now, lying in this hospital bed, with the constant beeping of the machines around me, I understand everything. I understand that from that first day, Patricia saw my house as something she could take. I understand that Matthew slowly stopped being my son and became her husband. I understand that while I was giving everything, they were just waiting for me to disappear. And they almost succeeded. But I woke up, and now everything was going to change. Matthew and Patricia's wedding was in June. June is a rainy month in Georgia, but that year the sky was clear, as if even the weather conspired for everything to be perfect. The wedding was in the garden of Patricia's parents' house, a large 2-story house with white columns and a garden full of roses. There were tables with white tablecloths, centerpieces with expensive flowers, uniformed waiters serving champagne. I arrived early in the prettiest dress I owned. I had bought it secondhand at a thrift store, but it was in good condition. Beige, simple, with long sleeves. I did my own hair, pulling it back into a low bun. When I arrived, Patricia's mother, Mrs. Thompson, greeted me with a tense smile. "Margaret, so glad you could make it. Come, I'll introduce you to the family." She took me from table to table, introducing me as the groom's mother. People nodded, smiled politely, and then went back to their conversations. I didn't fit in there. I knew it the moment I saw the other ladies' dresses. Designer dresses, gold jewelry, elaborate hairstyles. And there I was, with my secondhand dress and my 10-year-old shoes. But I didn't care. I was there for Matthew. I saw him at the altar, waiting. He looked so handsome in his black suit, nervous but happy. When our eyes met, he smiled at me. And for a moment, I saw again the little boy who used to tell me, "When I grow up, I'm going to buy you a huge house." Patricia walked in on her father's arm. She wore an elaborate white dress with beading that sparkled in the sun. Her hair was perfectly styled. Her makeup was flawless. She was beautiful. And when she reached the altar and took Matthew's hand, I saw something in my son's eyes that hurt me. Absolute adoration. The ceremony was short. The pastor spoke about love, commitment, family. Matthew and Patricia said their vows. They kissed. People clapped. And I, sitting in the front row on the groom's side, clapped too. Though something inside me felt broken. The reception was long. There was music, dancing, food, dishes I had never tried, wine that cost more than I earned in a week. I sat at a table in the back, alone for most of the time. Some of Patricia's aunts came to talk to me, but the conversation was always brief, awkward. "And what do you do for a living, Mrs. Turner?" "I sell food. Casseroles, barbecue." "Oh, how nice. So hard-working." And then they would leave. Matthew came to see me once between dances. "Are you okay, Mom?" "Yes, honey. Everything is beautiful. I'm so happy for you." He kissed my forehead and went back to Patricia. I stayed there, watching them dance under the lights strung from the trees. Patricia was laughing. Matthew looked at her as if she were the only thing that existed in the world. And I felt like I was losing him. Not all at once, but little by little, like sand slipping through my fingers. I helped pay for part of the wedding. Matthew didn't ask me to, but I insisted. "Mom, you don't have to. I have savings. I want to, honey. You're my only son. Let me help." I gave him $300. It was all I had saved that year. Money I had saved selling food, cleaning houses. Matthew accepted it, but I saw something in his eyes that looked like pity. "Thanks, Mom. I'll pay you back." "I don't want you to pay me back. It's my gift to you." But he never saw it that way. Neither did Patricia. Months later, during a lunch at my house, I heard Patricia talking to Matthew in the living room while I was making coffee in the kitchen. "I can't believe you accepted that money from her, poor thing. She must have nothing left." Her tone wasn't one of compassion, it was mockery. Matthew muttered something I couldn't hear. I just don't understand why she lives in this old house. She could sell it, move to a smaller, more modern apartment. This is too much for her alone. I stood still, the coffee pot in my hand. Matthew didn't answer. And that silence hurt me more than any words. The first few months after the wedding, Matthew still came to visit me. Not as often as before, but he came. Sometimes he brought Patricia. Other times he came alone. When he came alone, it was like before. We'd sit in the yard under the lemon tree and talk. He'd tell me about work, about married life, about his plans. Patricia wants us to buy our own house, Mom. We're saving up. That's wonderful, honey. A house is important. Yeah, though sometimes I feel like we'll never save enough. Everything is so expensive. I would listen, nod, pour him more coffee. But when Patricia came with him, everything was different. She would sit on the edge of her chair as if she were afraid of getting dirty. She'd look at her phone most of the time. She'd answer with one-word replies when I spoke to her. And always, she had something to criticize. Margaret, why don't you change these curtains? They're so old. This table is so scratched. Haven't you thought about buying a new one? The yard would be better if you put down some paving stones. This dirt gets so dusty. I would smile and say, "You're right, dear. I'll get to it someday." But I never did, because this was my house, and I liked it just the way it was. A year passed. Matthew and Patricia were still renting the same small apartment. Patricia complained constantly. "I can't live like this forever, Matthew. We deserve better." Matthew worked longer hours. He'd come home tired, stressed. He started looking thinner, with dark circles under his eyes. One night, he came to see me alone. It was a Friday, around 9. It was raining. He arrived soaked, without an umbrella. "Matthew, what happened?" He came in without a word. He sat at the kitchen table, his head in his hands. "I'm tired, Mom." I sat across from him. "Tired of what, honey?" "Of everything, of work, of the pressure, of not being enough." I took his hands. "You are more than enough. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." He was quiet for a moment. Then he looked up. "Patricia wants us to buy a house, but I don't have enough money for the down payment. I've been looking at loans, but the interest rates are sky high." "Give it time, honey. It will happen." "I don't know if she can wait much longer. She's very frustrated." Something in his voice hurt me, as if Patricia's frustration was more important than his own peace. "Matthew, listen to me. You can't live just to please someone else, not even your wife." He looked at me, surprised. "Mom, I'm telling the truth. Marriage is a two-way street. If she can't be patient, then the problem isn't yours. It's hers." He fell silent. Then he nodded, but he didn't seem convinced. He stayed the night in his old room, and for a moment, everything was like before. My son under my roof, safe, at peace. But things didn't get better. Patricia started calling Matthew at all hours. I knew because when he came to visit, his phone wouldn't stop ringing. "It's Patricia. She wants me to come home." "But you just got here." "I know, Mom, but she's upset. She says I left her alone all day." And he would leave. Every time that happened, I would stand at the door watching him walk away and feel like I was losing him more and more. 2 years after the wedding, the visits became more and more scarce. Matthew would only come once a month, sometimes not even that. When I asked him why, he always had an excuse. "Too much work, Mom. Patricia isn't feeling well. We have plans." And I would nod, even though something inside me broke a little more each time. It was around then that I started to notice Matthew was different, not just busier, but more distant. He talked less, smiled less. When he came to visit, he'd stay for only an hour and then leave. "Sorry, Mom, I have to go." But you haven't even tried the meatloaf. Next time, I promise. But next time was always the same, and slowly I stopped cooking for him because I knew he wouldn't stay to eat. 3 years after the wedding, Patricia and Matthew still didn't have children. I never asked. It wasn't my place. But Patricia mentioned it once during one of her rare visits. We were sitting in the living room. Matthew had gone to the bathroom, and suddenly Patricia said, "We can't have children." I looked at her surprised. "I'm so sorry, dear." "It's not your problem." Her voice was cold, but Matthew is taking it hard. He says he wanted to give you grandchildren. Give him time. There are other options. I don't want to talk about it. She cut me off. I'm just telling you so you know, so you're not waiting for grandchildren that are never going to come. And there it was again, that tone, that barely hidden contempt. Matthew returned, and the conversation ended. But from that day on, something changed in the relationship between Patricia and me. She no longer faked kindness. She no longer smiled when she saw me. She just looked at me with those cold, calculating eyes, as if she were waiting for something. 4 years after the wedding, Matthew came to visit me one September afternoon. He was alone. He sat with me in the yard, looking at the lemon tree. There were ripe lemons hanging from the branches. The air smelled fresh from a recent rain. "Mom," he said without looking at me, "have you ever thought about selling this house?" I felt the air leave my lungs. "Sell? Why?" He shrugged. "I don't know. It's big for you alone. And the money could help you. You could move somewhere smaller, easier to maintain." "Matthew, this house is my home. All my memories are here. Your father and I, we built this together. You grew up here." "I know, Mom. I was just thinking out loud." There was a long silence. "Did Patricia ask you to ask me this?" Matthew didn't answer, and that lack of an answer was all the answer I needed. I looked at him. My son, the boy I had held in my arms, the young man who had promised to take care of me. And I saw a stranger. "I'm not selling my house, Matthew." "Okay, Mom. It was just a question." He stayed for another half hour and then left. And I stayed sitting in the yard under the lemon tree with a broken heart, because that question wasn't innocent. It was a test, and I had just failed it. The following months were strange. Matthew stopped coming completely. He'd call once in a while, but the conversations were brief. "How are you, Mom?" "I'm fine, honey. And you?" "Fine. Busy. I'll call you later." And he'd hang up. I tried not to think too much about it. I tried to convince myself it was normal, that he was busy, that he had his own life. But deep down, I knew the truth. He was pulling away from me, and I didn't know how to stop it. It was in December of that year that I felt the first dizzy spell. I was in the kitchen, preparing casseroles to sell at the farmer's market. Suddenly, everything started to spin. I grabbed the edge of the table and waited for it to pass. It passed. But 2 days later, it happened again. And then again. I went to the doctor at the community health clinic. He ran some tests, told me my blood pressure was high. "You have to take care of yourself, ma'am. Less salt, less stress, more rest." I nodded. I took the pills he prescribed, but I didn't tell Matthew, because I knew if I told him, he would come only out of obligation. And I didn't want that. I wanted him to come because he loved me, not because he felt guilty. Another year passed. The dizzy spells continued. Sometimes they were mild, other times strong, but I kept going. I kept selling food, kept taking care of my house, kept waiting for Matthew to come back. And then, one afternoon in May, everything changed. I was in the kitchen as usual, preparing lunch. The radio was on, playing some classic country music. Suddenly, I felt the floor move beneath my feet. But this time, it didn't stop. I tried to grab onto something, but my hands didn't respond. I fell. And before everything went black, I managed to think, "Matthew, forgive me. I don't remember the hospital. I don't remember the ambulance or the lights or the paramedics' voices. The only thing I remember is waking up in darkness. A complete, silent, heavy darkness. I couldn't move my body. I couldn't open my eyes. I couldn't speak. But I could hear. At first it was just distant sounds, beeps, muffled voices, hurried footsteps. Then, little by little, I started to recognize words. Severe stroke. She's in a coma. We don't know when she'll wake up. If she wakes up. And then I heard Matthew's voice. How long can she be like this? He didn't sound distressed. He sounded tired. The doctor answered something I couldn't quite hear, but I caught scattered words. Weeks. Months. No guarantees. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him I was there, that I could hear him, that he shouldn't leave me. But my body didn't respond, and everything went back to darkness. A coma is a strange place. It's not like sleeping. It's not like dreaming. It's like being suspended between two worlds, neither here nor there. Sometimes I heard voices. Sometimes I felt hands touching mine. But I couldn't respond. The first few days or weeks, I'm not sure. I heard Matthew come to visit. He'd come in, sit by my bed, and talk. Mom, I don't know if you can hear me. The doctors say maybe you can, that maybe it helps. He'd pause. Patricia says that we have to be realistic, that you wouldn't want to live like this. Another longer pause. I don't know what to do, Mom. I don't know what you want me to do. And then he would leave. I wanted to scream at him. I'm here. I'm fighting. Don't leave me. But I couldn't. Matthew's visits became less frequent. At first, he came every day, then every other day, then once a week. And when he came, he didn't talk as much. He just sat in silence. Sometimes he would whisper, I'm sorry, Mom, but he never said what he was sorry for. One day, I heard Patricia. It was the first time she had come, or at least the first time I heard her. Her voice was cold, impatient. Matthew, we can't keep paying for this. The hospital is ridiculously expensive. She's my mother, Patricia. I know, but the doctors say she could be like this for months or years. We're going to spend all our savings on this. What do you want me to do? Pull the plug? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying. We have to think about ourselves too. There was a silence. She has a house, Patricia said. A big house. It's empty. We could? No. Matthew's voice was firm. I'm not touching her house. I'm not saying sell it, just that we use it temporarily while she's here. Patricia, I already said no. I heard footsteps walking away, a door closing forcefully, and then silence. I wanted to cry. I wanted to hug my son and tell him I was proud of him for defending me. But I couldn't do anything but listen. Weeks passed, or so I think. Time didn't exist in that dark place. Matthew's visits became shorter and shorter. He'd come in, sit for 5 minutes, and leave. Sometimes he didn't even speak. And I was there, trapped in my own body, screaming in silence. Then, one day, everything changed. I heard new voices, voices I didn't recognize. It's a beautiful house, and it's in good condition. Yes, my mother-in-law took very good care of it. It was Patricia talking to someone. And she's okay with you moving in here? She's indisposed at the hospital, but I'm sure she wouldn't mind. It's family, after all. My heart, if it was still beating in a way I could feel, sank. Well, if you're sure, completely sure, you can move in whenever you want. No, no, no. Patricia was giving away my house. My house. The place I built with my sweat. The place where my son grew up. The place where all my memories were. And I couldn't do anything to stop her. The next few days were torture. I heard fragments of conversations. Patricia on the phone. Yes, Mom. I already told them they can use the house. It's big. They'll be comfortable. Matthew, his voice tired. Are you sure about this, Patricia? Matthew, your mother isn't going to wake up. The doctor said so. And even if she does, do you think she'll be able to live alone? She'll need care. It's better if the house is occupied. They didn't say she's not going to wake up. They said they don't know. It's the same thing. No, Patricia, it's not the same thing. But his voice had no conviction. He sounded defeated, as if he had already lost the battle. And then one day, I heard Patricia's parents. Older voices, kind, grateful. Thank you so much, Matthew, really. You don't know how much we appreciate this. No problem, Mr. Thompson. The house was empty anyway. And how is your mom doing? A silence. The same, no change. Poor woman. But well, at least her house isn't alone. We'll take good care of it. Thanks. And just like that, my in-laws, who weren't even mine, but my daughter-in-laws, moved into my house, my home, the place where I planted the lemon tree with my own hands, and I could do nothing but listen. Listen as they dismantled my life while I fought to return to it. More weeks or months passed. I don't know. Time became a blur. Sometimes I heard the nurses talking about me. Poor lady, she's been like this for 3 months. Does her son still visit? Hardly ever, maybe once a week. How sad to be all alone like that. But I wasn't alone. I was surrounded by machines, by beeps, by strangers' voices. I just couldn't answer them. 4 months, 5 months, 6 months. Matthew's visits almost disappeared. He'd come once every 2 weeks, sometimes every 3, and when he did, he only stayed for minutes. Hi, Mom. I'm still here. Patricia and I. We're fine. Patricia's parents are taking care of your house. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. While I was trapped in darkness, while strangers were living in my house, while my son was forgetting me little by little, everything's fine. But then something started to change. I don't know how to explain it. It was like a small light flickered on in the darkness. At first, I couldn't move, but I started to feel. I felt a hand touching mine. A nurse, probably. I felt the sun coming through the window, warm on my skin. I smelled the disinfectant, the clean sheets, and then, slowly, I started to hear more clearly. The voices were no longer muffled. They were crisp. Her vital signs are improving. Do you think she could wake up? It's possible. I've seen cases like this. And then, one day, I felt like I could move a finger. Just one. But it was something. It was a sign that I was coming back. I don't know how much time passed between that first movement and the moment I finally opened my eyes. Maybe days, maybe weeks. But one day, I just did it. I opened my eyes. The light was blinding. I blinked several times, trying to focus. There was a nurse in the room, checking something on a machine. When she saw me awake, her eyes went wide. Mrs. Turner, oh my God! She ran to the door. Doctor, she's awake! Everything was chaos after that. Doctors coming in, checking me, asking me questions. Do you know where you are? I nodded weakly. Do you know your name? Margaret. My voice was a hoarse whisper. Excellent. Do you know what month it is? I didn't. The doctor smiled. Don't worry, that's normal. You've been in a coma for 6 months. 6 months. Half a year of my life. Lost. We're going to call your son. And then something in my chest tightened. Matthew was coming. And I had to tell him about the house. I had to. But then I remembered. I remembered the conversations I had heard. I remembered Patricia saying, she's not going to wake up. I remembered Matthew saying, Patricia's parents are taking care of your house. And in that moment, lying in that hospital bed, after 6 months of darkness, I made a decision. I was not going to be the victim. I was not going to beg. I was not going to cry. I was going to do what I had always done, handle things with my own 2 hands. But first, I had to hear what Matthew had to say. I had to see if my son was still there, underneath Patricia's influence, or if I had lost him forever. Matthew arrived 2 hours later. He entered the room with Patricia by his side. He looked tired. She, impeccable. I watched them from the bed, my body still weak, but my mind clear, clearer than it had been in years. Matthew approached slowly. "Mom, it's good you woke up." His voice was flat, no real emotion. Patricia stayed by the door, looking at her phone. I tried to smile, but I couldn't. "Matthew." He took another step closer, but he didn't touch me. And then he said it. The words that had been waiting to come out for 6 months. The words that would confirm everything I had heard in the darkness. "Mom, I gave your house to my in-laws. I thought you were going to die." The room fell silent. I stared at him. He stared back at me with those tired eyes, as if he were waiting for me to scream, to cry, to yell at him. But I did none of that. Patricia looked up from her phone and said, with that cold voice I knew so well, "Find somewhere else to live." And there it was. The whole truth. My son had betrayed me, and his wife was there, making sure I understood that I no longer had a place in my own life. I closed my eyes for a moment, took a deep breath, and when I opened them, something inside me had changed. I was no longer the submissive mother who forgave everything. I was no longer the woman who stayed silent in the face of insults. I was Margaret Turner, the woman who had survived widowhood, poverty, 6 months in a coma, and I was not going to let them take what was mine. "I understand," I said in a calm voice. Matthew blinked, surprised by my composure. "You understand?" "Yes, I understand perfectly." Patricia frowned, confused. Then I'm going to get out of here, and I'm going to sort this out." "Mom, there's nothing to sort out. The house is." "I know, Matthew, I heard everything." He froze. "What?" "I heard everything during the coma, every conversation, every decision you made without me." Patricia went pale. Matthew opened his mouth, but nothing came out. "Now," I continued, my voice firm, though my body trembled with the effort, "I want you to leave this room, and don't come back until I call you." "Mom, leave, Matthew." He looked at me for a moment longer, then hung his head and walked out. Patricia followed him. But before she crossed the doorway, she shot me a look that said, "This isn't over." And she was right. It wasn't over. It was just beginning. I spent 4 more days in the hospital after that encounter. 4 days where doctors ran tests, did therapy, and performed constant checkups. 4 days where I had to relearn basic things. To walk without stumbling. To hold a spoon without my hand shaking. To speak without my tongue getting tied. The body is strange. It can be asleep for 6 months and forget things you thought were permanent. But my mind was sharper than ever. During those 4 days, as the nurses helped me walk down the hallway, as the physical therapists guided me through simple exercises, I thought about everything I had heard during the coma. I thought about the conversations between Matthew and Patricia. I thought about how they had given my house away without my consent. And I thought about what to do about it, because one thing was clear. I was not going to sit back and do nothing. Matthew didn't visit me again during those 4 days. He called once, on the 2nd day after I woke up. He spoke to the nurse, asked how I was, and asked her to give me a message. "Your son says he's busy with work, but he'll come soon." I nodded, but I knew the truth. He wasn't coming because he was scared. Scared to face me, scared I would confront him. And he was right to be scared. Patricia didn't come either, but that didn't surprise me. She had never come before. Why would she start now? On the 3rd day in the hospital, I asked to speak with the social worker. She was a young woman, about 30, with glasses and a kind smile. "Mrs. Turner, how can I help you?" "I need to make some calls, and I need some information." She sat by my bed and took out a notepad. "Tell me." I was in a coma for 6 months. During that time, my son made decisions about my property without my consent. I need to know what my rights are. She frowned. What kind of decisions? He gave my house to other people. He said they could live there, but the house is in my name. I never signed anything. The social worker wrote quickly. Does he have power of attorney over you? I never signed anything like that. Then he had no legal right to make those decisions. I nodded. That's what I thought. Can you help me contact a lawyer? She nodded. Of course. There are free legal services for people in your situation. Let me make some calls. And so, while my body slowly recovered, my plan began to take shape. The next day, the lawyer came. His name was Mr. Davis. He was a man in his 50s, with graying hair and a firm voice. He carried a worn leather briefcase and reading glasses that he constantly put on and took off. He sat by my bed and listened to my entire story. I told him about the stroke, the coma, the conversations I had heard, about how Matthew had given my house to Patricia's parents without my permission. He took notes, nodded, asked questions. The house is in your name? Yes, only my name. Do you have the deed? It's at my house, in a drawer in the living room cabinet, along with other important documents. Did your son sign anything in your name? I don't know. But if he did, it was without my consent, and I never gave him power of attorney. Mr. Davis took off his glasses and looked at me directly. Mrs. Turner, what your son did is improper appropriation. If he allowed other people to occupy your property without your consent, that's illegal. And if he forged your signature on any document, that's fraud. I felt something in my chest. It wasn't satisfaction, it was sadness. Because we were talking about my son, about Matthew, the boy who had grown up in that house, who had promised to take care of me. And now here I was, planning legal action against him. What can I do? First, I need to verify if there are any forged documents. To do that, I have to go to the Public Property Records Office and check for any recent activity on your house. Second, I need you to sign a legal power of attorney so I can act on your behalf. How long will it take? A few days, maybe a week. I don't have much money to pay you. He held up his hand. Ma'am, this is part of a legal aid program. You don't have to pay me. I just want to help you get back what's yours. I felt tears in my eyes, tears of relief, of gratitude. Thank you, Mr. Davis. Don't thank me yet. First, let's get your house back. And so, the plan was set in motion. That same afternoon, Mr. Davis brought the papers for the legal power. I read them carefully. I signed with a trembling but firm hand. I'll start the investigation tomorrow, he said. I'll keep you informed. When he left, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in months, I felt something like hope. The next day, the doctor discharged me. Your recovery has been remarkable, Mrs. Turner. But you have to continue with physical therapy, take your medication, and come for checkups every 2 weeks. Yes, doctor, I will. Do you have somewhere to go? That question hit me, because I didn't. I had nowhere to go. My house was occupied by Patricia's parents, and I wasn't going to ask Matthew for help. I have friends, I lied. The doctor didn't seem convinced, but he nodded. Very well. The nurse will give you the discharge papers and the prescriptions. Take good care of yourself. When he left, I sat on the bed, dressed in the clothes the nurses had saved for me. The same clothes I was wearing the day of the stroke, now washed and folded. A simple cream-colored blouse, a pair of jeans, my old shoes. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. I had lost weight. My hair, which I had always kept neat, was completely white. I had new wrinkles around my eyes, my mouth. I looked old. 60 years old, and I felt like I was 100. But I was alive. And that's what mattered. I called Mrs. Gable, my old neighbor, the woman who had cared for Matthew when he was a child. She answered after 3 rings. Hello? Mrs. Gable, it's Margaret. There was a silence. Margaret! My goodness, I heard you woke up. How are you? I'm okay. I'm getting out of the hospital today and I need a favor. Tell me, dear, whatever you need. Can I stay with you for a few days, just until I sort some things out? Of course. Come whenever you like. My home is your home. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Thank you, Mrs. Gable. Thank you. Don't thank me. See you soon. I left the hospital that afternoon. I didn't call Matthew. I didn't want to see him yet. I took a taxi to Mrs. Gable's house. She lived 3 blocks from my house. 3 blocks that felt like a world away. When I arrived, she was waiting for me at the door. She had aged since I last saw her. She was 82 now, her hair completely white. Her back a little stooped, but her smile was the same. Margaret, my girl, it's so good to see you. She hugged me tightly. And I, who had held back tears for days, finally cried. I cried in the arms of this woman who had known me for decades, who had seen Matthew grow up, who knew my whole story. There, she said, stroking my hair. You're here now. You're safe. But I didn't feel safe. I felt broken. Mrs. Gable set me up in the guest room, a small room with a single bed, an old dresser, and a window that looked out onto the yard. Rest as much as you need, and when you're ready, you can tell me what happened. But I couldn't rest. That night, after Mrs. Gable went to sleep, I sat on the bed, looking out the window. From there, I could see the lights of the neighboring houses, and if I leaned out a bit, I could see my house. My house. The lights were on. There was a car parked outside that I didn't recognize, surely belonging to Patricia's parents. Strangers living in my home, sleeping in my beds, using my things. I felt rage, but I also felt something else. Determination. The next morning, early, Mr. Davis called Mrs. Gable's cell phone. Mrs. Turner, I have news. Tell me. I went to the Public Property Records office. I checked all the documents related to your house. There's no change of ownership, no sale, no document transferring the property to anyone else. I breathed a sigh of relief. So the house is still mine? Legally, yes. But there's a problem. What is it? Your son signed a common agreement. What's that? It's a contract where the owner allows someone else to use their property for free for a specific period. In this case, your son signed a common in favor of Mr. and Mrs. Charles and Sophia Thompson, your daughter-in-law's parents, for a period of 2 years. I felt my blood boil. But he had no right to sign that. The house is mine. Exactly. And that's the legal issue. Your son signed that contract using a power of attorney he claims to have over you. But when I checked the documents, I saw that the power of attorney is a forgery. A forgery? Yes. The signature that appears as yours doesn't match your actual signature. And the date on the document says it was signed a year ago. But according to my investigation, you never went to that notary's office. I spoke with the notary, and he has no record of you being there that day. I closed my eyes. Matthew had forged my signature, my own son. What does this mean? It means the common agreement is null and void, and it means we can proceed with a lawsuit for fraud and improper appropriation. We can also request an immediate eviction order for the current occupants of your house. How long will that take? If we act quickly and with the evidence we have, we could have a court order in 2 or 3 days. After that, a court officer will execute the eviction. We can also press criminal charges against your son for forgery of documents. My heart was racing. Criminal charges against Matthew. Mr. Davis, is there any way to get my house back without Matthew going to jail? There was a silence. Mrs. Turner, I understand he's your son, but what he did is a serious crime. If we don't press charges, he could do it again, or something worse. I know, but can I think about it? Of course. But every day that passes is another day those people are living in your house illegally. I understand. Give me a day. I'll give you my answer tomorrow. Very well. I'll call you tomorrow. He hung up. I stood there, the phone trembling in my hand. That afternoon, I gathered my courage and walked to my house. I just wanted to see it, just to know it was still there. I walked slowly, leaning on walls when I felt dizzy. The doctor had told me to rest, but I couldn't. I needed to see my house. When I reached my street, I stopped. There it was, my brick-walled house, my wooden door, my window with the curtains I had sewn. But everything looked different. There were new flower pots by the entrance, pots I hadn't put there. The paint on the door had been changed. It was now a green color I never would have chosen. And in the yard there was laundry hanging, clothes that weren't mine. I got closer, my heart pounding. I could see through the living room window, and what I saw broke my heart. There was new furniture, a large leather sofa occupying the space where my old floral print couch had been, a huge television on the wall, a glass coffee table. All my things were gone, as if I had never existed. "Can I help you?" I jumped. An older man was at the door. He must have been about 65, with gray hair and glasses. He wore a plaid shirt and jeans. Mr. Thompson, Patricia's father. I was just looking for someone. He looked at me suspiciously, as if I were a stranger, as if I weren't the owner of this house. Something inside me shattered, but I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing me cry. "Wrong house," I said calmly. "Sorry." And I turned away. I walked back to Mrs. Gable's house, tears streaming down my cheeks. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage. That night I called Mr. Davis. "Mr. Davis, proceed with everything." "Are you sure?" "Completely sure. I want my house back and I want justice to be done." "Understood. I'll file the papers first thing tomorrow. In 3 days, at the latest, we'll have the court order." "Thank you." "Mrs. Turner, I know this is difficult, but you're doing the right thing." "I know." I hung up. I sat on the bed, looking out the window toward my house, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control. Matthew and Patricia thought they could take everything from me. They thought I was weak, that I was a victim. But they were wrong, and they were about to find out. The next 3 days were the longest of my life. Not because of the physical pain. That was already fading. The therapy I did every morning at Mrs. Gable's house was working. I could walk without getting dizzy. I could hold a coffee cup without trembling. No, what consumed me was the waiting. Waiting for the court order. Waiting for all of this to be over. Mr. Davis called me every afternoon with updates. "I filed the lawsuit, Mrs. Turner. The judge is reviewing the documents. We need one more signature, an additional witness." Each call filled me with anxiety and hope at the same time. Mrs. Gable tried to keep me distracted. "Come on, Margaret. Help me make these biscuits. Let's watch the evening news. Tell me how you're feeling today." She was kind, patient, but I couldn't focus on anything but my house, getting back what was mine and confronting Matthew. On the second day after I left the hospital, Matthew finally came looking for me. Mrs. Gable announced it from the door. "Margaret, your son is here." I felt my stomach churn. "Do you want me to tell him you're not here?" "No, let him in. I needed to see him. I needed to look him in the eye." Matthew walked into the living room, his steps uncertain. He looked tired, thinner than the last time I'd seen him in the hospital. "Mom, sit down." He sat on the couch across from me. Mrs. Gable discreetly disappeared into the kitchen. We sat in silence for a long moment. He stared at the floor. I stared at him. Finally, he spoke. "I didn't know you had left the hospital. I would have picked you up." "To take me where, Matthew? To my house? The one you gave to your in-laws?" He flinched. "Mom, I thought you were going to die," the doctor said. The doctors never said I was going to die. They said they didn't know how long I'd be in a coma. There's a difference. I was scared. Scared of what? Of being left with a sick mother? Of having to take care of me? No, that's not it. I was scared of losing you. And when Patricia suggested that— Ah, Patricia. I couldn't help the bitter tone. Of course. Patricia. She just wanted to help. Help? Giving my house to her parents is helping? They needed a place to live. They had sold their house to pay off debts, and I needed my house too, Matthew. The house I bought with my sweat, the house where I raised you. My voice broke at the end. He covered his face with his hands. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. Why did you do it? He looked up. His eyes were red. Why? Because I didn't know what else to do. The hospital was so expensive, and Patricia kept saying we had to be practical, that your house was empty, that her parents would take care of it, that you weren't coming back. But I did come back. Yes. His voice was barely a whisper. You came back. And what are we going to do now? I don't know, Mom. Patricia's parents are already settled in. They brought all their furniture, made changes to the house, new paint, repairs. Without my permission. I know. Do you know what you did, Matthew? Do you have any idea? He looked at me, confused. You forged my signature. You signed a common agreement with a fake power of attorney. That's fraud. It's a criminal offense. He went pale. How do you know that? Because I hired a lawyer, and he investigated, and he found the document with my forged signature. Mom, I didn't. Was it Patricia who forged my signature? He was silent. Answer me, Matthew. She knew someone, a notary who did the papers. I just signed as a witness. I closed my eyes. So it was worse than I thought. They hadn't just taken my house. They had planned everything, conspired. And you didn't think it was wrong? I thought you weren't going to wake up. His voice was weak. I thought you'd never find out. I opened my eyes and looked at him. Really looked at him. And I saw a man I no longer recognized. A weak, manipulated, lost man. Matthew, I am 60 years old. I have worked my entire life. I survived losing your father. I survived poverty. I survived 6 months in a coma. And I am going to survive this too. Mom, I am going to get my house back, with or without your help. What are you going to do? I've already done it. I filed a lawsuit. In a day or two there will be an eviction notice, and Patricia's parents will have to leave. He stood up, agitated. You can't do that. They have nowhere to go. I had nowhere to go, Matthew. My voice boomed in the small living room. He froze. I woke up from a coma, and my own son told me to find somewhere else to live. Do you have any idea how that felt? Tears were streaming down my face now. I spent 6 months fighting for my life, 6 months in darkness, and when I finally came back, the first thing I heard was that everything had been taken from me. My house, my home, my place in the world. Mom, please, no. Matthew, there are no more pleases. I've already made my decision. Patricia is going to kill me if I do this. And there it was. The truth. He didn't care about me. He cared about Patricia. Then you know who to choose. He just stood there, his shoulders slumped, defeated. What do you want me to do? I want you to talk to Patricia's parents. I want you to tell them they have 3 days to vacate my house before the court officer arrives. They're going to need more time. I needed more time to recover from a coma, but life doesn't give us what we need, Matthew. It gives us what we deserve. And what do I deserve? I looked him straight in the eye. That's something you're going to have to figure out for yourself. He left shortly after, without hugging me, without saying anything else. He just turned and walked out. Mrs. Gable came out of the kitchen when she heard the door close. "Are you all right, dear?" "I don't know, Mrs. Gable. I don't know." She hugged me, and I cried again. But this time, they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of liberation, because I had finally said everything I needed to say. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything. I thought about Matthew as a little boy, how he would hug me, how he would tell me he loved me. I thought about his graduation day, how he had looked for me in the crowd to smile at me. I thought about all the promises he had made me. "When I grow up, I'll take care of you. I'll never leave you alone. You're the most important thing to me." When had it all changed? When had he become this man who put his wife before his own mother? At what point did I lose my son? The next morning, Mr. Davis called. "Mrs. Turner, I have good news. The judge has approved the eviction order. It will be executed the day after tomorrow at 10 in the morning." I felt my heart beat faster. So soon? Yes. The judge saw the evidence of forgery and considered it an urgent case. There's also an arrest warrant for your son and the person who forged the documents, but that will be executed after the eviction. An arrest warrant? Yes, for fraud and document forgery. But we can still stop that if you want. If your son returns the house voluntarily and acknowledges the crime, we can reach an agreement. I closed my eyes. An arrest warrant. My son could go to jail. "Give me until tomorrow. I'm going to talk to him." "All right, but the eviction is still on. That can't be stopped." "I understand." I hung up. Mrs. Gable was watching me from the kitchen doorway. "Are you going to give him another chance?" "I don't know, but I need to try one last time." That afternoon, I went to find Matthew. Not at my house. I didn't want to see Patricia's parents yet. I went to his work. It was an office building downtown, modern, with glass walls and security at the entrance. I asked the guard to call Matthew. "Tell him his mother is here." The guard made the call. Minutes later, Matthew came down. He looked surprised. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "I need to talk to you. Can we go somewhere?" He looked at his watch. "I have a meeting in half an hour." "This is more important." He sighed. "There's a coffee shop a block away." We sat at a table in the back. He ordered a coffee. I ordered a tea. When the drinks came, I spoke. "The day after tomorrow, at 10 in the morning, a court officer is coming to the house. He's going to execute an eviction order. Patricia's parents have to leave." Matthew went pale. "You already did it?" "Yes." "Mom, they have nowhere to go." "That's not my problem, Matthew. That's your problem. You put them there. You get them out. And what do you want me to do? Put them on the street?" "I want you to find a solution, but not at the expense of my house." He ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. "Patricia is going to leave me if I do this." And there it was again. Patricia. Always Patricia. "And what about me, Matthew? Don't I matter?" "You do matter, Mom, but she's more important." He didn't answer, and that silence was all the answer I needed. I stood up. "Is there anything else you need to know?" "What?" "There's an arrest warrant out for you for fraud, but I can still stop it if you do the right thing." "The right thing?" "Give me my house back. Acknowledge you made a mistake and make sure Patricia's parents leave peacefully. Do that, and I'll drop the criminal charges." He looked at me with wide eyes. "You would send me to jail?" "I don't want to, Matthew. You're my son. But if you force me, yes, I will." "I can't believe you're saying this." "I can't believe a lot of things that have happened. But here we are." I turned to leave. "Mom, wait." I stopped, but I didn't turn around. "What happened to us?" His voice was cracking. "When did we become this?" I turned around slowly. "We became this when you stopped being my son and became only Patricia's husband." and I walked out of the coffee shop. That night, Matthew called me. "Mom, I talked to Patricia. I talked to her parents. They're going to vacate the house tomorrow." I felt a huge sense of relief. "Really?" "Yes. They're not happy. Patricia is furious with me, but they're going to leave." "Thank you, Matthew. Are you going to drop the charges?" "If everything goes well tomorrow, yes." "Okay." There was a long silence. "Mom, I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry." "I know. Will you ever forgive me?" I closed my eyes. "I don't know, Matthew. Maybe. But that's going to take time." "I understand. I love you, my son. I'll always love you. But that doesn't mean I'm going to let you hurt me again." "I understand." We hung up, and I sat there on the bed, phone in hand, feeling empty and full at the same time. Empty because I had lost something with my son that would never be the same. Full because for the first time in a long time, I had stood up for myself. The day of the eviction dawned gray. Heavy clouds covered the Atlanta sky, threatening rain. The air was humid, thick. I woke up early, at 6 a.m, even though the eviction was scheduled for 10. I hadn't been able to sleep well. I had tossed and turned all night, thinking about what was going to happen. In a few hours, I would be back in my house. My house. But I didn't know what condition I would find it in. I didn't know what Patricia's parents had done with my things, with my furniture, with my memories. Mrs. Gable made coffee and donuts for breakfast. "You have to eat something, Margaret. It's going to be a long day." I tried to eat, but the food got stuck in my throat. "I can't, Mrs. Gable. I'm too nervous." "I know, dear, but you need your strength." I took a sip of coffee. It was hot. Comforting. "Do you want me to go with you?" "No, this is something I have to do alone." She nodded, understanding. "But if you need me, just call. I'll be here." "Thank you." At 9:30, I left Mrs. Gable's house. I walked slowly toward my street. My heart was beating so loudly I could hear it in my ears. When I reached the corner, I saw there was already an official car parked in front of my house. It was white with official lettering on the side. Mr. Davis was standing by the car, talking to a man in uniform. He must have been the court officer. When he saw me, the lawyer came toward me. "Mrs. Turner, good morning." "Good morning, Mr. Davis. How are you feeling?" "Nervous." "It's understandable. Let me introduce you to Officer Morales. He's the one executing the order." The officer was a man in his 40s with a mustache and a serious expression. He extended his hand. "Mrs. Turner, I'm sorry you have to go through this." "Thank you. Do you know if the people occupying the property are aware of the eviction?" "My son told them yesterday. They said they would vacate voluntarily." "Good. That will make things easier. But I still have to execute the order formally." I looked at my house. The curtains were drawn. There was no sign of movement. Are they still there? We're about to find out. At 10 o'clock sharp, Officer Morales knocked on the door. He knocked 3 times, loudly. "Officer of the court, open the door." We waited. Nothing. He knocked again. "I have an eviction order. Open the door, or I'll have to force entry." Finally, the door opened. Mr. Thompson, Patricia's father, stood there. He looked tired, defeated. He was wearing a wrinkled shirt and jeans. "We're just leaving," he said in a hoarse voice. "Are you vacating the property?" "Yes, we're just finishing packing." "You have 30 minutes. Mr. Thompson nodded and stepped aside. The officer went in first, then Mr. Davis, and finally, me. I entered my own home for the first time in over half a year, and what I saw broke my heart. Everything was different. The walls I had painted cream were now white. The red tile floor that had cost me so much to install now had rugs over it. The living room where my old floral print sofa had been now had that big leather couch I had seen through the window, the glass coffee table, a modern lamp that didn't match anything. On the walls were pictures of Patricia's family, pictures I didn't know, people I had never seen, as if my life, my history, had been erased. "Where's my furniture?" My voice came out trembling. Mr. Thompson was putting things in a box. "We stored it in the shed in the backyard. We thought you weren't coming back." The shed, my furniture, my memories, shoved into a shed like garbage. I walked to the kitchen. My wooden table, the one I had painted myself, was gone. In its place was a glass table with metal chairs. My old stove, where I had cooked thousands of meals for Matthew, had been replaced by a new, shiny one. Even the dishes had been changed. My chipped mugs, my ceramic plates with flowers were gone. Everything was new, modern, impersonal. "Where is Mrs. Thompson?" the officer asked. "In the bedroom, packing." I walked to the bedrooms. What had been my room now had a king-size bed I didn't recognize. The curtains were different. The closet was full of clothes that weren't mine. In Matthew's room, what had been his childhood room, I found Mrs. Thompson. She was a woman in her 60s, thin, with dyed brown hair and pearl earrings. She was folding clothes and putting them into suitcases. When she saw me, she stopped. We looked at each other in silence for a moment. "Mrs. Turner," she said finally. Her voice was cold. "I didn't think you would come back." "Well, I did. Matthew told us you were very sick, that I probably wouldn't wake up. Matthew was wrong." She went back to folding clothes with sharp movements. "This isn't fair. We had nowhere to go. Matthew offered us this house. We didn't do anything wrong, except live in a house that wasn't yours, without my permission." "Your permission wasn't necessary. You were in a coma. Matthew had the right to." "Matthew had no right. This house is mine, only mine, and you knew it." She slammed the suitcase shut. "Patricia was right about you. You're a selfish woman." Those words hit me like a slap. Selfish? For wanting my own house back? For not thinking about your son? For putting him in this position? Patricia is furious with him. Their marriage is. If my son's marriage is in trouble, it's because he made bad decisions, not because of me. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You took advantage of my illness, and now that I'm awake, you're upset because you have to face the consequences. Mrs. Thompson looked at me with eyes full of rage. "Someday you're going to be alone, Mrs. Turner. Completely alone. And then you'll understand what it's like to lose everything." Her words hung in the air. Officer Morales appeared at the door. "Ma'am, you have 20 minutes to finish packing." Mrs. Thompson grabbed her suitcases and walked out of the room without looking at me. I stood there, in what had been Matthew's room, feeling a huge weight in my chest. I went out to the yard. I needed air. I needed to see my lemon tree. But when I reached the yard, I stopped dead. The lemon tree had been pruned, severely pruned. The branches that once reached the roof of the house were now short stubs. There were no lemons, no green leaves, just bare branches, like dry bones pointing at the gray sky. "What did you do to it?" I whispered. Mr. Thompson was taking boxes out of the shed. The tree was getting too big. It was in the way. We had it trimmed. In the way? Yes. The branches were reaching the bedroom window, and the lemons would fall and make a mess in the yard. I felt hot tears in my eyes. That tree. I had planted that tree with my own hands 25 years ago. I had cared for it, watered it every day, watched every branch grow, harvested every lemon, and they had mutilated it as if it were nothing. "That was my tree," I said, my voice breaking. Mr. Thompson shrugged. "It'll grow back." But I knew it wouldn't be the same. It would never be the same. Half an hour later, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson finished packing. They had 4 large suitcases, several boxes, and trash bags full of clothes. Officer Morales supervised as they loaded everything into their car. I stood at the door, watching. When they were done, Mr. Thompson approached me. "We'll leave the keys on the kitchen table." "Okay. Take care, Mrs. Turner." I didn't answer. Mrs. Thompson walked past me without a word. But she shot me a look full of resentment. They got in the car and drove away. Officer Morales handed me some papers. "The eviction has been executed. The property is yours again. Here are the official documents." "Thank you, officer." "If you have any problems if they try to come back, call us immediately." "I will." The officer and Mr. Davis also left shortly after, and finally, I was alone. Alone in my house. I walked in slowly. The silence was absolute. I walked through the living room, touching the walls. They smelled different. Of new paint. Of strangers. I went to the kitchen. The shiny new stove looked at me like an insult. I went to my bedroom. The huge bed took up the whole space. I went to Matthew's room. It was empty now, just marks on the walls where things had been hung. And finally, I went out to the yard. I sat on the concrete floor in front of the pruned lemon tree, and I cried. I cried for everything I had lost. Not just the months in the coma, not just my furniture, my decor, my home as I knew it. I cried for my son, for the sweet boy who would hug me and tell me he loved me, for the young man who promised to always take care of me, for the man who should have been on my side but chose his wife over his mother. I cried because I had won back my house, but I had lost my son. And that loss hurt more than anything else. I don't know how long I sat there. The sky grew dark, the clouds finally opened up, and it started to rain. Thick, cold drops falling on my head, my back, but I didn't move. I let the rain soak me. I let it wash away my tears. And in the middle of that rain, I made a promise. A promise to myself. I was going to rebuild my house. I was going to bring its soul back. I was going to bring my furniture out of the shed. I was going to strip that white paint and bring back the cream color to the walls. I was going to care for my lemon tree until it bore fruit again. And if Matthew wanted to be a part of my life again, he would have to earn it. Because I was no longer the mother who forgave everything unconditionally. I was no longer the woman who stayed silent. I was Margaret Turner, and I had survived worse things than this. When the rain finally stopped, I got up, soaked, my body aching. But my head held high. I went into my house, went to the shed in the yard. There were my things, piled up like trash. My floral print sofa, my painted wooden table, my chipped mugs, my ceramic plates with flowers, all covered in dust, forgotten, but still there. I took one of my mugs, wiped it with the sleeve of my blouse, took it to the kitchen, put water on to boil on that new stove I hated, made coffee and sat on the kitchen floor because I hadn't brought my table in yet, and I drank that coffee in my old mug. It tasted like home, like resistance, like dignity. And in that moment, I knew I was going to be okay. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday I was going to be okay. I spent the first night alone in my house, but not in my bed. That huge bed that Patricia's parents had left behind wasn't mine. I didn't want to sleep there. I slept on the floral print sofa I had taken out of the shed. I cleaned it as best I could, wiped the dust off with a damp cloth, and lay down there. It was uncomfortable. The flowers were faded, the cushions flattened after years of use. But it was mine. And that night, for the first time in months, I slept in peace. The next day, I woke up early. The sun was just rising when I opened my eyes. The light came through the old curtains I had also rescued from the shed. I got up slowly. My body was still weak, but every day I felt a little stronger. I made coffee in my old coffee maker, used my chipped mug, and sat in my wooden chair by the kitchen window. And as I drank that coffee, looking at the yard where my lemon tree was trying to survive with its mutilated branches, I made a decision. I was not going to live in bitterness. I was not going to live the rest of my life remembering what they had taken from me. I was going to rebuild. I was going to heal. I was going to forgive. But forgiving didn't mean forgetting, and forgiving didn't mean letting it happen again. That morning, I called Mr. Davis. "Good morning, Mrs. Turner. How was your first night back in your house?" "Good, Mr. Davis. Thank you for everything you did for me." "You don't have to thank me. Have you decided what to do about the criminal charges against your son?" I took a deep breath. "I want to drop them." There was a silence. "Are you sure?" "Yes. My son made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But I don't want him to go to jail. I want him to learn. I want him to live with the consequences of his actions, but not that way." "I understand. I'll proceed with dropping the charges. But Mrs. Turner, you have to understand that if he does something like this again, he won't, because I'm not going to give him the chance." "What do you mean?" "I want you to prepare a will that makes it clear that my house, my assets, everything I own, will be donated to a charitable foundation when I die. My son will inherit nothing." Mr. Davis coughed, surprised. "Ma'am, are you absolutely sure about that?" "Completely. I worked my whole life for this house. I built it with my sweat, and I will not allow someone who has shown they don't value it to have it when I'm gone." "I understand. I'll prepare the documents." "Thank you, Mr. Davis." I hung up and felt something strange in my chest. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't rage. It was liberation, because I had finally taken control of my own life. I spent the next few days cleaning. I took out all the furniture Patricia's parents had left: the leather sofa, the glass table, the huge bed, the modern lamps. I piled them in the yard, covered with a tarp. Matthew could come get them whenever he wanted, or they could stay there until they rotted. I didn't care. Little by little, I brought my things in from the shed. My painted wooden table returned to the kitchen, my mismatched chairs, my old stove. I had to pay a plumber to reconnect it, but it was worth it. In the living room, I placed my floral sofa, my wooden coffee table with its hot cup rings, my floor lamp with the yellow fabric shade. I hung my old curtains, my cheap paintings from the flea market. And slowly, the house began to look like what it had been again. My home. One afternoon, while I was painting the living room walls, bringing back that cream color I loved so much, someone knocked on the door. It was Matthew. I hadn't seen him since the day of the eviction a week ago. He looked terrible. Deep dark circles, an unshaven beard, wrinkled clothes. "Mom." "Matthew." We looked at each other for a moment. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. He walked in slowly, looking around, seeing the changes. The old furniture I had put back, the half-painted walls. "You're fixing everything up?" "Yes. I'm putting the house back the way it was." "Mom, about what happened." "I don't want to talk about that right now, Matthew. But I need you to know that I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry." I turned to look at him. "Are you sorry because it was wrong? Or are you sorry because you got caught?" He fell silent. "Matthew, I dropped the criminal charges. You're not going to jail." His eyes lit up with relief. "Really?" "Yes. But there are conditions." "What are they?" "First, you will never again make decisions about my life, my property, or my health without my explicit consent. Second, if I am ever sick or incapacitated again, there is a legal document that specifies exactly who has power of decision over me. And it's not you." I saw him go pale. "Mom." "Third condition. I've changed my will. This house, everything I own, will be donated when I die. You will inherit nothing." "What?" "You heard me. But I'm your son. I'm your only son. And I was your mother, your only mother. And you still left me with nothing when you thought I wasn't going to wake up." Tears began to stream down his face. "Mom, please, I know I messed up. I know I made the worst decision of my life, but I'm still your son. I know. And that's why I dropped the charges. That's why you're not in jail. But that doesn't mean I'm going to reward what you did by leaving you everything I have. And what do you want me to do? What can I do to fix this? I walked closer to him. I want you to learn. I want you to understand that actions have consequences. I want you to value the people who love you before it's too late. I do value you, Mom. I love you. Then prove it. Not with words, with actions. How? That's something you have to figure out for yourself. He stood there in the middle of my living room, crying like I hadn't seen him cry since he was a child. And a part of me wanted to hug him, wanted to tell him everything was okay, that I forgave him completely. But I didn't, because it wasn't okay, and complete forgiveness had to be earned. You can come visit me whenever you want, I said softly. But I am no longer the mother who says yes to everything. I am no longer the woman who sacrifices without limits. I am Margaret, and if you want a relationship with me, it's going to be on my terms. He nodded, wiping away his tears. I understand. How are things with Patricia? His face darkened. Not good. She's very angry. She says I chose my mother over her, that I humiliated her in front of her parents. And what did you tell her? That I did the right thing, that I should have done it from the beginning. I felt something in my chest, something like pride. You really told her that? Yes. And she says she needs time, that she doesn't know if she can stay married to me. And what do you want? I don't know, Mom. I love Patricia, but I can't keep being the person I was. The person who let her make all the decisions. The person who hurt you to please her. I sat on my floral sofa. Matthew, sit down. He sat next to me. When your father died, I was 30 years old. I was alone with an 8-year-old boy with no money. It would have been easy to give up. It would have been easy to let bitterness consume me. But you didn't? No, because I decided I was going to be stronger than my circumstances. I decided I was going to build a decent life for you and for me. I looked him straight in the eye. Now, you're in a similar moment. You have to decide what kind of man you want to be. A man who lets himself be manipulated, or a man who makes his own decisions, even when they're hard. And if Patricia leaves me, then she wasn't the right person for you. But I love her. Love isn't enough, Matthew. You also need respect. You need your partner to value you as a person, not just as a provider or an extension of herself. He was silent, thinking. Did you love Dad? I smiled sadly. Very much. But what I value most about our relationship wasn't just the love, it was the mutual respect. He never asked me to stop being who I was, and I never asked that of him. Patricia has always wanted to change me. I know. How do you know? Because I saw it from the first day I met her. I saw how she looked at you, how she looked at your clothes, your car, your life, as if everything needed an upgrade. Why didn't you ever say anything? Because you were happy. Or I thought you were happy. And I wanted you to be happy. I don't know if I've been happy, Mom. Honestly, I don't know. I took his hand. Then you have to find out. But do it for you. Not for her, not for me. For you. He nodded. We sat in silence for a long while. Finally, Matthew spoke. Are you ever going to trust me again? I thought about my answer carefully. I don't know, son. Trust is like a mirror. Once it's broken, you can piece it back together, but you'll always see the cracks. I understand. But that doesn't mean we can't try. It just means it's going to take time. How much time? I don't know. Maybe months, maybe years. Maybe it will never be like it was before. But we can build something new, something different, Something better. Maybe. If we're both willing to work on it. He stood up. Thank you, Mom, for not sending me to jail, for giving me another chance. You're my son. You'll always have chances with me, but you won't get any more free passes. He smiled weakly. Understood. He walked to the door. Before leaving, he turned around. Can I come help you paint? I looked at the half-finished walls. Do you really want to? Yes, I'd like that. I'd like to spend time with you, doing something together, like before. I felt tears in my eyes, but I held them back. Come on Saturday early. I'll make coffee and sweet rolls. His smile grew wider. I'll be there. And he left. That night, I sat in the yard in front of the lemon tree. Its branches were still bare, but if I looked closely, I could see tiny green buds starting to appear. New life. Growth. After the brutal pruning, the tree was healing, just like me. I took my coffee cup and raised it to the sky. To new beginnings, I whispered. To dignity. To strength. And I took a sip. It tasted bitter, but it also tasted like victory. The following Saturday, Matthew arrived at 8 in the morning. He brought a bag of sweet rolls from a nearby bakery, the same one he used to buy from when he was a boy. I brought cinnamon rolls and bear claws, your favorites. I smiled. Thank you. I made coffee. We sat in the kitchen at my painted wooden table, and for the first time in years, we had breakfast together without tension, without Patricia interrupting, without urgent calls from work. Just him and me. Like old times. After breakfast, we painted. Matthew put on an old t-shirt, and we started painting the living room walls. Cream, the color I loved. We worked in silence most of the time. A comfortable silence, not an awkward one. Mid-morning, while we were painting, Matthew spoke. Mom, do you remember when I was a kid and I used to help you sell casseroles at the town square? I smiled. Of course I remember. You used to carry that heavy box without complaining. I wanted to help you. I wanted you to be proud of me. I have always been proud of you, Matthew. Even now. I stopped painting and looked at him. I'm disappointed in what you did, but I'm still proud of the man you can become. And if I don't become him, then that will be your choice. But I will keep hoping, because you are my son, and sons always have a chance to grow. He went back to painting, but I saw tears running down his cheeks. I didn't say anything, just kept painting beside him. By the end of the day, the walls were finished. Cream. Perfect. The house was starting to look like it used to, like my home. Matthew stayed late. We had dinner together. Refried beans with cheese and tortillas. Simple food, but made with love. When he left, he hugged me tight. Thanks, Mom. For what? For not giving up on me. I will never give up on you, but I will also never let you hurt me again. I know, and I won't. I promise you. Don't just say it, Matthew. Do it. I will. And he left. I stood at the door, watching him walk to his car, and for the first time in a long time, I felt hope. Not hope that everything would go back to how it was, but hope that we could build something new, something stronger, something based on respect, on healthy boundaries, on true love. Not on blind sacrifice, but on mutual dignity. 3 months passed. 3 months where my life slowly found its rhythm again. My house was now completely restored, the walls cream-colored, my old furniture in its place, the lemon tree sprouting new green leaves, small but firm. I went back to selling casseroles at the farmer's market on weekends, not because I needed the money, but because I liked it, because it made me feel useful, because it connected me with the people in my neighborhood. Margaret, it's so good to see you back. We thought you had left. We heard you were very sick. And I would smile and tell them, without giving too many details, that I had been in the hospital, but that I was fine now. Life went on. Matthew came to visit me every couple of weeks. Sometimes he brought sweet rolls. Sometimes he just came to sit with me in the yard and drink coffee. We didn't talk much about what had happened. That had already been said. But slowly, we were rebuilding something. It wasn't like before. It would never be like before. But it was something new, something more honest. One Saturday, as we were drinking coffee under the lemon tree, I asked him, "How are things with Patricia?" He was quiet for a moment. "She's gone." "Gone?" "Yeah, a month ago. She said she couldn't be with someone who chose his mother over her." I felt something tighten in my chest. "I'm sorry, son." "Don't be." I looked at him, surprised. "No, really, Mom. I realized something after she left. I realized that for all those years, I was trying to be someone I wasn't, trying to please her, trying to be enough for her. And I never was. I was never going to be." "How do you feel?" "Free." He smiled sadly. "For the first time in years, I feel free." I took his hand. "I'm happy for you. Truly. You deserve someone who loves you for who you are, not someone who wants to change you." He nodded. "Her parents moved away too. They're renting a small apartment in another town. Mr. Thompson had to go back to work. Mrs. Thompson is selling food from her house to help with the bills." I didn't say anything. I didn't feel satisfaction or joy at their situation, just acceptance. The natural consequences of their choices. One afternoon, while I was watering the lemon tree, Mrs. Gable came to visit. "Margaret, can I come in?" "Of course, Mrs. Gable. Come on in." We went into the kitchen. I made coffee. "How have you been, dear?" "Good. Better every day." "I'm so glad to see you like this. When you woke up from the coma, I thought you weren't going to make it." "I thought so too, but here I am." "And your son? How is he?" "He's finding himself, I think. Patricia left him." Mrs. Gable nodded. "I know. I ran into Patricia 2 weeks ago at the grocery store." "Oh, really?" "Yes, she looked different. Thinner, her hair unkempt. Nothing like the Patricia we knew." They talked a bit. "She told me she was living with her parents, that Matthew had disappointed her, that she couldn't believe he had put her in that situation." I took a sip of coffee. "And what did you say to her?" "I told her that actions have consequences, and that maybe she should have thought of that before taking her mother-in-law's house." I couldn't help but smile a little. "You really said that to her?" "Of course. Someone had to." Mrs. Gable winked at me. 2 weeks later, I got a call. It was a number I didn't recognize. I answered. "Mrs. Margaret Turner?" "Yes, this is she." "This is Ms. Fuentes from the hospital where you were admitted. I'm calling because we've been reviewing your case and would like to ask you a few questions." "Questions about what?" "About the medical decisions that were made during your coma and about who authorized them." I felt a shiver run down my spine. "What kind of decisions?" "Well, according to our records, your son signed several documents authorizing treatments and procedures. But now that we've reviewed the files, we've noticed that some of those documents have irregularities." "What kind of irregularities?" "I'd rather not discuss it over the phone. Could you come to the hospital this week?" "Yes, I can." "Perfect. How about Thursday at 2 in the afternoon?" "Yes, I'll be there." I hung up. What else had Matthew done while I was in a coma? On Thursday, I went to the hospital. Ms. Fuentes was a woman in her 40s, serious, with glasses and hair pulled back in a tight bun. She received me in her office. "Mrs. Turner, thank you for coming. I know this must be uncomfortable for you." "What did you find?" She opened a folder. "During your coma, your son authorized several treatments and procedures. Some of them were necessary, but others were not." "Like what?" "For example, he authorized the suspension of certain early rehabilitation treatments treatments that would have helped prevent muscle atrophy and would have made your recovery easier. I felt the blood rush to my head. Why would he do that? Ms. Fuentes looked at me with compassion. According to the nurse's notes, your daughter-in-law was pressuring to let you go in peace, to not prolong your suffering unnecessarily. But I wasn't suffering. I was in a coma. I know. And that's why we're reviewing the case. We also found that your son tried to access your life insurance policy while you were unconscious. My life insurance. Yes, you have a small policy for $20,000. Your son tried to claim it, arguing that you had no chance of recovery, but the insurance company refused because you were still alive. I was speechless. Matthew had tried to cash in my insurance while I was fighting for my life. Is there any legal action you'd like to take? Ms. Fuentes asked. I closed my eyes. No, I've already done what I needed to do. I've already set my boundaries, but thank you for informing me. Are you sure? Yes. Life is already taking care of teaching the necessary lessons. I didn't tell Matthew anything about what Ms. Fuentes had told me. Not because I wanted to protect him, but because it didn't matter anymore. I had already made the decisions I needed to make. I had already set the boundaries I needed, and life was already doing its job. I heard from Mrs. Gable that Patricia had had to sell her jewelry, the jewelry she loved to show off, the gold earrings, the pearl necklace, the expensive watch, all sold to help her parents pay the rent. I also heard that Matthew had been laid off from his job, not for poor performance, but because the company was downsizing. And he, without Patricia's support, without the appearance of success she demanded, had been one of the first on the list. I didn't feel joy hearing these things, just understanding. Karma isn't revenge. Karma is simply life responding to our choices. One Sunday afternoon, Matthew came to visit. He looked tired but calmer than before. Mom, I lost my job. I know. How? Mrs. Gable told me. Ah. We sat in the yard. The lemon tree now had branches full of leaves, still no lemons, but it looked alive, strong. What are you going to do? I don't know. I'm looking for another job, but in the meantime, I'm selling some things, simplifying my life. How do you feel about that? Honestly? Good. I realized I had a lot of things I didn't need. Things I bought to impress Patricia, to impress her parents, to seem more successful than I was. And now I just want to live honestly, work hard, be a better person, a better son. I looked at him. You're growing up, Matthew. I had to fall first. Sometimes that's necessary. He took a sip of coffee. Mom, I know you changed your will. I know I'm not going to inherit anything. That's right. And that's okay. I understand. I deserve it. It's not about what you deserve. It's about protecting what I built and making sure that if something happens to me, it helps people who really need it. He nodded. Can I ask you something? Of course. Someday will you be able to forgive me completely? I thought about my answer. I've already forgiven you, Matthew. But forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean things go back to how they were. It means I'm letting go of the resentment. It means I'm giving you the chance to be better. But trust that you have to earn back. I will, I promise. Don't promise me, just do it. He smiled. I will. That night, I sat alone in the yard. The stars were shining in the dark sky. The air smelled of damp earth. It had rained early in the afternoon. I looked at the lemon tree. Its leaves moved gently in the breeze. And I thought about everything that had happened. The stroke, the coma, the awakening, the betrayal, the fight, the recovery. And I realized something. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to destroy anyone. Life had taken care of everything. Matthew had lost his marriage, his job, his appearance of success. Patricia had lost her status, her comfort, her control. Patricia's parents had lost their house, their peace, their comfortable retirement. Not because of me, because of their own choices. Life always collects its debts, I whispered to the wind, and I took a sip of my coffee. It tasted like peace. It's been 6 months since I woke up from the coma, 6 months since I came back to life and discovered everything had changed. Today is Sunday. The sun is streaming through my kitchen window, illuminating my coffee cup and the plate of sweet rolls I bought yesterday at the neighborhood bakery. I'm sitting at my painted wooden table, the same table where Matthew did his homework when he was a child. The same table where I've had thousands of coffees throughout my life. Outside, in the yard, my lemon tree has its first lemon. Just one, small, still green. But it's there. After the brutal pruning, after being left bare and wounded, the tree is bearing fruit again. Like me. Matthew found a job 2 months ago. It's not the same kind of job he had before. It's not in a fancy office with an impressive title. It's at a small accounting firm, helping local businesses with their taxes. He earns less, but he's calmer. He comes to visit me every week now. Sometimes he brings flowers from the market. Sometimes he just brings his presence. And that's enough. Last week he helped me fix a leak in the roof. We worked together in silence, like before. When we finished, we sat in the yard and drank lemonade. "Mom," he said, looking at the lemon tree. "It has a lemon." "Yes, the first one since it was pruned. It's going to grow back strong, like all things that survive the storms." He looked at me. "Are you talking about the tree or about you?" I smiled. Both. I haven't heard from Patricia again. Mrs. Gable told me she moved with her parents to another city, far from here, far from the memories. I wish her the best, truly, because holding a grudge only poisons the one who holds it, and I no longer have space in my heart for poison. This morning, while watering the lemon tree, I thought about everything I've learned. I learned that love without boundaries isn't love, it's self-destruction. I learned that forgiving doesn't mean allowing yourself to be hurt again. I learned that dignity is more important than keeping the peace at any cost. I learned that sometimes the people you love will disappoint you, and it's okay to feel hurt by that. But it's also okay to move on. I learned that karma isn't revenge. It's simply life responding to our choices. And I learned that it's never too late to start over. I'm 60 years old. I'm not young, but I'm not finished either. I can still make casseroles. I can still paint walls. I can still plant trees and watch them grow. I can still live. Yesterday, a young woman came to buy casseroles from me at the farmer's market. She was about 30, with a small child by the hand. "Ma'am, do you still have any of the barbecue?" "Yes, dear. How much would you like?" "A pound, please." As I was packing the food for her, I noticed her eyes were red, as if she had been crying. "Are you all right?" She nodded quickly. Yes, it's just been a difficult day." I handed her the container. Life is difficult sometimes, but it always passes. Always. She looked at me with bright eyes. "You think so?" "I know so, because I've had difficult days too, many of them. But I'm still here." She smiled weakly. "Thank you, ma'am." "You're welcome, dear. Take care." She left with her child, and I stood there thinking, maybe this is my new mission in this life, to remind people that difficult days pass, that storms end, that after the darkness, there is always light. This afternoon, Matthew is coming over for dinner. I'm going to make his favorite meal, meatloaf with mashed potatoes. We're going to sit at the kitchen table like we used to and talk about simple things, about life, about the future. We're not going to talk about the past. That's already been said. We're going to build something new, something based on respect, on honesty, on healthy boundaries. And maybe someday we'll have complete trust again, or maybe not. But that's okay. Because the important thing isn't to go back to how we were. The important thing is to be better than we were. If you're listening to this story, if you've made it this far, I want you to know something. No matter how dark your day is, no matter who has betrayed you, no matter how lost you feel, there is always a way out. There is always a way to start over. I woke up from a coma and discovered that everything had been taken from me. My house, my dignity, my place in the world. But I didn't give up. I fought, I stood up, I set boundaries, I reclaimed what was mine. And if I could do it at 60 years old, after 6 months in a coma, after losing almost everything, you can too. You don't need revenge. You just need dignity. You don't need to destroy anyone. You just need to protect yourself. And above all, you need to remember that you deserve respect, even from the people you love. Especially from the people you love. My name is Margaret Turner. I'm 60 years old, and this was my story. The story of how I lost almost everything and how I got it back. Not with rage, not with revenge, but with dignity, with boundaries, and with the certainty that I deserve to be treated with respect. If my story helps just one woman to open her eyes, to set boundaries, to defend her dignity, it will have been worth it. Thank you for listening to the end. May God bless you. And remember, after the storm, the sun always, always shines again.